For Sunday, August 14th, you found the Georgia Gang. Topping our agenda today, Delta Airlines suffers a major computer hit. There's a major change at the university system, and Hillary Clinton commits to Georgia. Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia Gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
And we're glad you could be with us. We begin today not with politics, but with business and technology and where they intersect. And kind of a warning, I think, to all of us about life in the 21st century. This week, Delta Airlines took a tremendous hit. Thousands of flights canceled all across the world because of computer systems that apparently didn't have backup systems. And Jeff, I turn to you because nothing's more important to the metro area, the state of Georgia really, than Delta Airlines' fate and fortune. And seeing all those thousands of flights canceled, travelers stranded, business meetings missed, it was not a pretty sight.
It was not a pretty sight. There were a lot of stranded passengers out there. The first day, it appeared that they were really taking it in stride. I think day 2, day 3, people were getting a little more frustrated with all this and were wondering what was going on. This is really unprecedented, both for Delta Airlines, which is one of the more reliable airlines, by the way, but for any airline to have had this kind of technical dysfunction for this period of time and to have affected so many people. Having said that, I thought that the CEO did the right thing. He got out there. You heard from him. He was apologetic. He was empathizing with customers, as you should do in a situation like this. They've done everything that they can to make their customers whole, and so I think that they've handled it about as best as they could.
Alexis, Ed Bastian is the new CEO. He went out front and center and said, this one's on me. He didn't blame anyone else. And further analysis showed, however, that it wasn't Georgia Power's fault, as some of the first reports had said.
Yes.
It really was the lack of redundancy in computer systems, and Bastian was able to explain they're getting on that problem. They were already on it.
They are going to fix it. However, there's apparently a lack of redundancy at Georgia Power as well, because they did blow out a transponder that Georgia Power had, but there was no place else for them to go. So there is a little bit of that. I know that my power goes out quite often with the storms that we get often through Atlanta. But I think that Delta did as best they could, and they're getting things back on track.
Well, you know, and Phil, Southwest Airlines had the same problem last month. Not to the same extent quite, but I got the feeling Delta came away with more goodwill or less bad will, let's put it that way, than Southwest Airlines did.
Well, I'm not sure, and I agree with you, Jeff, that Ed Bastian, the CEO, did a good thing. You always have to apologize to people, and people appreciate it, but there's another step, and that is I think they're going to have to start on a case-by-case basis reimbursing some of these horror cases where expensive business meetings and vacations were missed. And so it's one thing to apologize, but there's still a lot of grumbling.
Give a $200 credit.
Well, you need to give credits. You need to give hotel rooms, and that'll show good faith aside from an apology.
I think they did put people up in hotels, and there were hotels in the nearby area were overbooked too because of that.
Are we too dependent on Delta Airlines in Metro Atlanta? Have we grown too dependent?
Well, that's a good point on competition. They're trying to
fought off all competition.
Well, they've tried to stop and successfully any second airport over in Gwinnett County or over in Paulding County, and they're very protective. I think you are too, and I would hope all of us for competition. I'd like to see it open up more. And I also I think, Alexis, to your point, there are ways to get backup power, and so I think Ed Bastian is working on that.
Yeah, it's such a, it's a very unique industry, obviously, with very high costs, and governed by some things that are just
regulations.
Really variable, like the fuel, that they have no control over. So what we've seen, instead of more competition, is more consolidation in that industry, particularly over the last 10 or 12 years or so. And I think that, you're to the point where, you've got a few players within a very, very, very tight price range. If you go out and you look for a specific flight and you try to go and find another one.
Because we're having higher prices, to your point, because there's less competition.
Well, and they're also too big to fail.
And they spend, Delta, of course, to my way of thinking, spend way too much time doing stuff that's extraneous to the airline business. Like when you get on the plane, you get the letter from the former CEO, and it tells you that they're sponsoring 10 homosexual rights pride fairs and
Stay out of
around the
politics.
country.
Stay out of
that.
politics.
That's not politics. That's
Fix your
community
computers.
engagement. Come
I
on.
think they've been
There's
a great civic partner
Yeah,
in Atlanta.
absolutely.
Well, it's divisive.
And,
It is
well,
divisive.
you know, and sometimes it's helpful. You know, when you've got a flag, for instance, that threatens to hurt economic development in Georgia, Delta Airlines has been on the front line to make sure
No, what I want them
that
doing,
flag gets changed.
No, I want them getting the Nigerian soccer team to the Olympics like they did. That was a heck of a move when that team was stranded.
That's right, they
That was a
did.
smart,
They-
that was a great
It
thing
was
to
a
do.
great
Delta
thing.
picked them up and took them. All right.
That's
Phil, I
exactly
want to
right.
stay with you because this is an inside baseball thing, but this one's important. Hank Huckabee, the head of the university system in Georgia, the chancellor, has decided to retire. I didn't see that coming. I thought he was there for a while. He's got the support of the governor, the legislature, and the university system and the regents. And he's going to be tough to replace.
He is going to be tough to replace. I actually had talked to him last fall at a Georgia football game along with the president of the University of Georgia, and he was saying pretty openly that I think I've got one more year, and that he
Really?
wanted to turn the reins over. I actually think that he did a great job, if you want to reflect on his record over 5 years.
Through the recession, particularly.
Through the recession, particularly, but as we all know, he presided over something that is a model for the rest of the country, and that is the consolidation of some of our colleges for more efficiency and saving money. There was 32, I think, when he started. Now there's 29.
37.
I think there was more like 32.
You know, his career goes a lot longer than that and farther than that. And before going over to the regents and the university system, right, he was a critical part of state government. It was the budget. I believe at one point he was a budget director, and has served in a number of
He was
roles
a-
over
was John
several.
Miller's budget
As
director.
long
He's
as
a
I
good
can
one.
remember, and you know, we're talking 30 years or so. And so this is a guy who's really been.
He was one of those sources, Jeff, that if you called him about the budget, you knew the answer was a straight one.
You knew that you had the right answer. That's exactly right. He was
Steve
always
Wrigley
reliable.
will be the interim replacement. Steve was in the Zell Miller administration with Hank Huckabee.
Right.
And I don't think he's the long-term answer. I could be wrong.
Well, I think they'll set up, obviously, the Board of Regents controls everything, and they're going to set up probably a national search committee, I would think.
Right.
All right, we
But he
gotta-
has been his deputy all along, so he's been right there working with him hand in hand.
I hope he has that innate numbers sense that Huckabee.
He actually does. I think he's a good interim, Steve
Okay.
Wrigley. Yeah.
All right. One quick topic before we get out. Governor Deal went to Montgomery, kind of a secret mission, to meet with the governor of Alabama. And I think that's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
Let's get this thing maybe settled before a court
You're talking about the
rules.
water wars.
Yes, thank you. The water wars, yeah.
And you're talking about, trying to stop this expense. Oh, the lawyers are the ones making all the money on this thing, which is horrible.
But I had a quick question for you, Jeff. Governor Deal insists that we're building all these reservoirs in North Georgia. Are we? I thought that had all kind of stopped.
Well, you know, the governor, when he first came in, he had a plan and a budget, and you had to go and apply, depending on where you were, and an opportunity to build a reservoir. This is a long, difficult process. It's not just a state process. It involves a very convoluted and protracted federal process of 404 permit and securing one of those permits. So it's not an easy thing to do. It can take you 20 years to get a 404 permit. So I think that the governor's been pushing for more reservoirs, more water storage in Georgia. It's just tough to actually get there.
It's our water. I'm sorry to say.
And we don't want it stolen from us.
It's our water. We want to hold it in reservoirs.
some people think that there's some water in Tennessee that's our water.
It is our water too. That's our water too.
We're having a war on all fronts. I think we're having a war on
God
four
rest
fronts.
the late Harry Geisinger, but doggone it, he was right. That's our water in that boundary dispute with Tennessee. All right. When we come back, I'm going to turn the stage over to Phil to talk about a judge up in Blue Ridge and one of Phil's favorite topics, crime, this time in Buckhead. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
Always never all 100% right on the right.
We want to just touch on Blue Ridge, Georgia, Fannin County, the three-county judicial circuit there. Looks like federal authorities are now getting involved, Phil. Am I right?
You
on
are
this
right.
dispute with the judge and the fees and the newspaper publisher who was jailed.
Well, you're right, and it's the Appalachian Circuit up in North Georgia, and it is a soap opera up there. We're talking about Superior Court Judge Brenda Weaver. The FBI is now investigating her. It has gone way beyond, for viewers, all of this started when a newspaper publisher had written critical things about the judge, and what happened was the DA also, Allison Sosby, also bears a lot of blame for abusing her office. They're buddies. They wanted to go after, and they did successfully jail this publisher and the lawyer, which is a total violation of his First Amendment and civil rights. That's how it all started.
And it all has to do with fees paid to a court reporter. It's amazing.
That's right. It was a freedom of information request, which was very legitimate. Any journalist can do that. All four of us have done that.
Any citizen.
Any citizen can do it. and it was revenge. And this Judge Weaver admits it's revenge. She needs to be kicked out of her Superior Court judgeship. She's a disgrace. She's also, get a load of this, she's chairman of something called the Judicial Qualifications Commission, which oversees bad judges and investigating bad judges. She needs to step down immediately from that.
Let me bring it a little closer to home, and we'll look at Gwinnett County for a moment. Jeff and I have had this discussion for 30 years. 30 years we've talked about this.
Okay.
And in Gwinnett County, a bunch of malcontents have sued, bringing the feds into it, because Gwinnett County's commission and school board have no minorities. Now they have women, and they have men, but they don't have any like black people and Hispanic people and Indian people and Native American people. And guess what? They never intended to discriminate. The lines of the Gwinnett County Commission districts and school board have been essentially the same for the last 40 years, in my view. But because they can't win an election, they want the government to win it for them.
Well,
did I stack the deck for you enough?
Yeah, you stacked the deck quite a lot there. So much so I don't know that people know what we're talking about, but what we're essentially talking about when it comes to the Voting Rights Act is the distinction between effects and results. So you have the ability to vote, to cast a vote, and whether or not that vote actually results in the election of a minority. And we've seen this. I mean, if you look back at how it has affected Congress, particularly over the last couple of decades, it is astounding, because we had a results-oriented approach to the Voting Rights Act. You had these districts drawn, like the Old Fourth, where Cynthia McKinney represented folks from South DeKalb County to Savannah, and what you do is you scoop up all of the black voters, African-American voters along the way, to create what was known as a...
You're suggesting Gwinnett should do that?
To create what was called a supermajority district, a supermajority minority district, right? And what we didn't realize, or I think what the proponents didn't realize, is that in the process you create supermajority white districts, Republican districts, and the next thing you know, you had a guy named Newt Gingrich, Speaker of the House of Representatives, and an overwhelmingly Republican Congress. And so I think that when you try to talk about results oriented, and whether it's Gwinnett or elsewhere, you might end up hurting yourself in the process.
Is the law to allow people to vote, or is the law, the Voting Rights Act, now in this case, what it means is, if the plaintiffs prevail, Phil, it means that the law says that you must elect minorities.
Well,
not just allow them to vote.
You just got to the nub of the problem. And, you know, if there is discrimination, which obviously the Voting Rights Act was put in place to stop discrimination at the polls, you can go to court at any time.
Well, they just did.
And sue, and they go, and they do. But there's no indication that minorities aren't able to vote or run people for office. You're making a good point. You've got to get good candidates, and you've got to run them, and it would foster, to your point, maybe some biracial and bipartisan cooperation.
Well,
you are right about the balkanization that has occurred.
A similar
action happened in Fayette County. You know, they decided to go with district representation to allow for some representation from some of the minority communities.
Yeah, but Fayette was different to the extent that you had at-large voting. So you had
Gwinnett's districts.
Yeah, well, no, Gwinnett is districts. It wasn't Fayette. Fayette had at-large, and so that was a very different case that needed to be, I think, adjudicated and turned down.
But I think the problem is going to solve itself, because Gwinnett is probably one of the more diverse counties. Its population population is growing. And I think if the line stayed the same, I think
they've
it would solve
elected Hispanic
itself.
state representatives.
Well, yeah, they have.
State
Right.
representatives.
That's a very good point.
And what I was trying to get to earlier is that I think that there is some inherent peril in trying to go after results.
Right.
It's one thing to say that you have the vote and the Voting Rights Act guarantees the vote. It does not guarantee a
Well,
result.
you're actually agreeing
Thank
here
you.
in the end.
My golly, after
that's
30
good.
years, we're there. Now, let
So
me
let's unpack these.
We had to get a
so now-
Republican.
so- right.
We had to get a Republican Congress first to realize.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. So now they have to unpack the districts that they've packed here.
unpack some of those
Real
districts,
quickly,
right.
we're running out of time here. Let me just talk about an interesting thing on John Schaffner's Buckhead View. The old editor is still plugging along, doing some good reporting, and the police commander in Buckhead was talking about how his officers were being shot at. One of them was saved by his bulletproof vest, and he noticed something that I'd kind of overlooked. Kasim Reed has promised that all Atlanta police officers will be equipped with vests, bulletproof vests, that will stop an AR-15. It's pretty impressive. It's
That's a
gonna
good
cost,
thing.
It's like $1 million. That's an expenditure I can go along with.
Well, that's right. And
How
you know,
many AR-15s are out there? That's the thing.
well,
we
that
need
is
to get
the
rid
most.
of those.
The
How about
AR-15
that?
is a semi-automatic rifle. It's the most popular selling rifle in the country for hunting and for home protection. And I'll put in a word for the Atlanta Police Foundation too. They have been helping the Atlanta Police Department buying these bulletproof vests. And the reason is these gangs. You and I, we've all talked about on the Georgia gang, the rise of the criminal street gangs over the last 10 years, and they do need
they're
this.
buying the
And I will give
AR-15s.
Kasim Reed credit for addressing this.
We're the only gang in town that doesn't have vests.
I always push back on that name
AR-15s.
for that very reason. You know, I mean, there was a lot of gang activity around when we renamed this program, and
By the
I
way,
still
just-
have problems with it.
One that we got to get out. Just a tribute to those officers, men and women who work those beats. These new vests weigh 43 pounds.
Wow.
Now you imagine putting
Walking
on a
around with
43-pound vest, plus your belt, plus your light, plus your weapon. Wow.
Yeah.
A lot of equipment, yeah.
These people
Tremendous
have got to
amount
be
of
in
equipment.
shape.
That's
They
right.
have got to be in
Yeah.
shape. My
Right.
hat's off to them. All right, when we come back, Hank Johnson goes to Palestine? Okay, we'll tell you about it. And Hillary Clinton's coming here. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
And please don't forget our Facebook page and YouTube. Remember, you can search YouTube by simply asking for the Georgia Gang. Sometimes the broadcast is up on YouTube before it appears on television.
Is that right?
Which is, yes.
I didn't know
Not
that.
always, but occasionally it is.
does
Sneak
that
peek, sneak peek if it cracks staff.
On the Fox 5, the Fox 5 station.
They're
cracks
on it,
down.
doggone it.
We're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but Hank Johnson, the representative of Georgia's 4th District, the spiritual heir to Cynthia McKinney, was revealed this week to be the most traveled congressman in the Georgia delegation. The reason I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, it's only $41,000
Over
We're gonna-
almost 2 years.
over 2 years.
I don't know
Are we
how
going to
you
lose
do
sleep
that.
over that?
I don't. And no, not only that, but it was. I think it was like a dozen trips, 10 or 12 trips for $41,000. And so the question is, how do you do that? I mean, your average family of 4 can't make that happen. They can't take 10 trips, vacations, whatever, on a plane for that amount of money. It's amazing.
You're right. But the problem for me is that he went with a group that favors the abolition of Israel. He went as their guest.
Well,
They
you know,
favor-
but there is another group out there, APAC, you're very familiar with it, that for a long time has been, you know, doing these junkets for congressmen who favor the abolition of Palestine, right?
Yeah. Well, no. They favor the preservation of Israel. And
APAC.
So
and
this
they
is
would
the
even
point of view.
wait.
It's the point of view
No,
question.
let me say what
and
APAC,
they would even
APAC
support-
stands for a two-state solution.
Two-
Let's be
that's it,
factual.
exactly,
But
two-state
That's
solution.
incorrect, Jeff.
That's what I was
Okay.
trying
Well,
to.
I
2
don't-
states,
Well,
Palestine and
I
Israel.
don't think the Palestinian group is not out to eliminate Israel.
All right, let's get to politics of a more raw sort. This week it was announced that Hillary Clinton's staff has decided Georgia could turn purple and the state could be competitive, and so the Clinton campaign is committing resources to Georgia in terms of staff, money, and airtime, I guess. I still don't see it. Phil, they're moving because of a poll that shows Hillary Clinton up 7 in Georgia.
Well, the polls are all over the place. We talked last week about the AJC poll that was done by the SRBI group, which if you look at its own crosstabs, they had more Democrat respondents than Republicans, so that casts a lot of doubt, and there's actually some internal division in the AJC as to whether that was accurate or not. However, I will say this, I think that, yes, it is going to be a state where, I don't know how much, the Democratic Party of Georgia wasn't clear how much resources the Clinton campaign was going to put in. That's still up in the air. But I think the bounce now is gone. As just before we taped, I was looking at several polls. Alexis, you're right. They're all over the place in Georgia, elsewhere. Our own Fox 5 analyst Matt Towery, for example, he and his son polled Florida, and it just came out Friday, and that is statistically even. I would say this, I would say if Florida is statistically even, I would say Trump might be even or have a slight lead in Georgia.
Well, it's interesting. Stacey Abrams, the House Democratic Minority Leader, was on one of the national politics shows, and she suggests that there is an opportunity for Georgia to go blue even in this election if they can get the voter turnout of the existing voters, black voter turnout at 70%, if they can get 20% of the other people of color votes, and if they can get 30% of the white vote, they can do it.
Well,
That's the 30% that's going to be difficult.
There was another poll that came out shortly after the AJC poll. AJC poll showed a 4% lead for Clinton. This next poll shows a 7-point lead for Clinton. And the thing about it that I think gave it some credence was they only asked 4 questions. And they also asked about Isaacson. And Isaacson said, while Clinton was up 7, Isaacson was up 9. And to me, just intuitively, that makes sense that people would split their ticket in that way, and they're thinking they're discerning between those two. I will say this, I think that if you had a popular African American running against Isaacson this time around, you could very well see go
well,
Democratic.
We've heard this every 2 years that Georgia's turning purple or blue, and what Donald Trump did, and you know,
well,
Stacey is right if those numbers can come true. I'm not disputing what you just said, but I will point out to you and her that Donald Trump brought out new voters during this last spring primary here that had never voted in the Republican primary, and the numbers were double for the GOP as opposed to the Democrats.
Yes,
Okay,
but he has really, I think, done damage to his brand since the
He's brought in new voters.
We need to wrap it up. I just was struck by one thing in the AJC poll, and that was support of weapons. And the headline was that the state was evenly divided on
the
assault weapons ban.
That was a slanted poll. You know, assault weapons, the mainstream media totally abuses that term. It never defines what an assault weapon is.
But Georgians overwhelmingly supported concealed carry and steps to prevent terrorists from getting weapons. So let's bring Hillary Clinton in to discuss her views on guns with those same Georgia voters. All right, when we come back, winners and losers.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
Falcons teased us a little bit Thursday night with an exhibition game win. Preseason game win. So football's sort of underway. We'll begin winners and losers with you, Jeffrey.
Oh, thank you. First one is going to be Manuel's Tavern. Opened up Thursday night after being closed for a little while, and some of our old friends were there. Donald Bryant, you remember him?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It was just, and so many others, and it was a great event. And it's great to have back that old watering hole, that intersection of journalism and politics in Atlanta. We need it, and it's a great thing. The loser's got to be Donald Trump. He had another bad week where he had to attribute so many of his over-the-top remarks to sarcasm, as he said it. And then on top of that, 50 national security advisors, Republicans, all came out and said that he was unfit to be president of the United States and to have control over the nuclear codes.
Alexis?
Okay, I'm going to go with the Olympics, and we're just wondering out loud now how many babies are going to be named Simone after this week, where we had Simone Biles being best all-around gold in the Olympics, and Simone, what's her,
Swimmer.
Swimmer.
Yeah.
Simone, come on.
Morgan. Yeah.
Being the first U.S. African-American swimmer to meet gold in swimming. So that's exciting. And then, of course, you can't go without recognizing Michael Phelps. He may have another gold by the time we finish this show, but he's got 22 as of Friday. So it was amazing.
He's
Four
a force of nature.
Amazing.
The length of his arms, the size of his hands and feet, he's just a force of nature.
Yeah.
Philip?
Well, I'm gonna agree with you on that winner. Our Olympics team, as we tape, I mean, they're really cleaning up and getting some good medals. And I will go back to the beginning of the broadcast. University System Chancellor Hank Huckabee had a great run as Chancellor of the system. My loser is the head of Black Lives Matter of Greater Atlanta. He's a character named Sir Major Page. Now, you don't read about this in the AJC, but he has a series of arrests, one of them impersonating an Atlanta police officer and trying to stop
being
people.
Head of Black Lives Matter.
It's
too.
horrible. And so he's my loser of the week. I'm glad you agree with me.
But her name
Sir Major.
Yes, Sir Major
Let
Page.
me come back. It's Simone Manuel.
Thank you. She's from Sugar Land, Texas. I know a lot about her. I got the name wrong. All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to stick on that Olympic theme because the University of Georgia's swimming team was represented. Almost every race, it seemed to me, they were Stanford swimmers and they were Texas swimmers, and I didn't actually do a count, but the University of Georgia's swimming program is a powerhouse, and those young people were everywhere, and Gunnar Betts from St. Pius and the University of Georgia also got a gold medal in the relay, so that was kind of cool. And that'll all wrap up this coming week. We'll wrap up today. See you next week.
All right.